Alright, so here I've got a question that uses modules and for loops, right? So this is the multiplier module. What it's asking us to do is create a program that prints a specific multiplication table for a specific number, right? It first says to create a module called showTable that takes one integer parameter, num. Inside the module, use a for loop to print the results of num times I for the numbers 1 through 12. Then it says in the main program, ask the user for a number, then call your module using that number as the argument. Alright, so when you're dealing with pseudocode questions that involve modules, what I recommend is you begin with the module. Usually in pseudocode, you start with your main method, right? Start with your main method here, but let's not do that. Let's start with our module because that's the first thing that we're going to create, right? So in pseudocode, you can either say method and then your module name, which in this case is showTable, or you can just write your module name like that, right? I like to just say method because it gives a clear definition of when my module is starting, right? So method show table. Then it says here that takes one integer parameter as num, right? One integer parameter num. So in here you'll create brackets and then you'll basically say num as int, right? Just initialize your parameter here, right? So now in your method, you are wanting to use a for loop to print the results of num times I for the numbers 1 through 12, right? So we know that a method is just a grouping of code that performs a singular task, right? So that we don't have to do it in our main method, right? So we can just call it in our main method and it'll be a-okay. Alright, so we'll start with our for loop. So for, now we want to obviously use I as our counter variable. Now it says for the numbers 1 through 12. So we know that our what's it called? Our range is going to be the numbers 1 to 12, right? So we'll say I is equal to 1 to 12, right? That's our for loop done. Now it says inside the for loop, we need to print the results of num times I, right? So what do you literally just do there? You just output, then we say num times I. You can make it prettier by adding a string before it, saying result plus, and then you obviously have to put this in brackets, num times I, right? Just to tell the program that you are concatenating and not adding, right? That's literally all you do in your method. Then you say your end for, or actually you'll say next I, and then end method. I like to do that for my methods. Start my method with the method keyword and end it with the end method keyword, right? Then next thing we do is our actual main program, right? So now we exit from our method and now we go to our start. We are going to obviously need to declare variables here. So we'll need to declare our integer variable that we're going to add as our argument in our, when we call our method, right? So here we can just say declare input as int, right? Boom, we got our declaration done. Now it says ask the user for a number, then call your module using the number argument. So we're going to need to ask the user to enter a number. Enter a number you want the multiplier multiplication table 4. Right, you can do that, and then obviously you have to say input. Should probably actually just change this to num, since input is a reserved word. Just change it to num. Cool. So now we've got the user to input a variable as num, right? Now it asks us to call our module using this number that the user entered as an argument. So remember how we did it in Java? We would just write the method name, and then in the brackets write the argument, right? We do the same in pseudocode. We just say set show table as num. Boom. And what all that does is it calls this method and basically says, okay, for whatever number I enter here, I am going to do this method. I'm going to perform the for loop here and multiply whatever number I've entered here by I, and then I'm going to display that result. That's all the method is doing. So then you do that, call your method, and then you say end, and then that's the end of your program.